For 3 years now, experts knew this could happen, that despite the phone hotlines and the secret cooperation, a deadly mistake could happen and in an instant ruin everything. Thanks for tuning in for your Daily Dose. This is a major international stories, and we have live team coverage from around the world on the developments. We have in Moscow a journalist, Jessica King, standing by for us, as well as here in Israel, a former IDF combat pilot and reserves general. But let's begin in Moscow with Jessica King. Jessica, what could the security consequences be, the diplomatic consequences be from this deadly incident?
Well, it's certainly going to create a very tricky diplomatic situation, of course, between President Putin and Prime Minister Netanyahu. But we do know that today the Israeli Air Force commander is actually coming to Moscow to try and give some information about what their conclusions are on how this crash could have happened. They say they'll be presenting data, including some preliminary information. So there certainly seems like there's been a very quick response to try and get to the bottom of this. And there was initially, a lot of anger from Moscow, a lot of Russian MPs coming out with very strong words, as you mentioned, and that report calling it hostile behavior and threatening retaliation. But then later on in the afternoon, we did hear from President Putin, who really sort of softened Moscow's reaction and called this a chain of tragic and chance circumstances. So in his view, there was a lot of things that a category of errors from lots of different sides here, not solely putting the blame on Israel, but of course, this is going to create a tricky and quite a tense political situation.
And what kind of meeting will happen, do you think, quickly, Jessica, later today? Will it be a conversation? Will it be a presentation of data and bullet points?
Well, we haven't heard much from the Kremlin side on exactly what's going to happen. We've heard more from the Israeli Defense Forces, who say that a delegation, actually, including the Air Force commander, will be presenting data. They'll be including preliminary information and main conclusions on the investigation. So it sounds like it'll be more of a presentation from their side on what they think happened and how it went so wrong.
I want to ask, sir, the theory that has been said that maybe these IDF fighter jets took advantage of the situation, that they saw another plane, knew it would be effective cover for them. They used that plane as cover effectively, got out of there, and then that plane was left and shot down. Do you think that happened? And could it have happened that that plane was used for a purpose?
I can't say. I mean, I have no information about that. It's hard to believe that this is what happened. I believe that the story as it is, that Israel attacked a Syrian target on Iranian target according to its declared policy. And then when we left, the Syrians did what they did. I don't believe there is something behind. But again, that's according to my best understanding. What
is the security cooperation exactly, sir, between Israel and Moscow? Did the security apparatus, the security protocols, did they fail in this case? Or is it just one of those things when you're dealing with just seconds to go, this can happen?
Okay, first of all, we understand that there is a coordination mechanism between us and the Russians. That's why probably the Chief of Staff and the Chief of the Air Force went frequently to the Moscow to talk about it. There is no doubt that it exists. Secondly, we know that the Russians were informed a few minutes before the attack, which means that Israel does inform them, but she doesn't do it too early, because maybe if it does, it'll be they will inform the Syrians. It's just an assumption that I make. So there is a mechanism in which we inform the Russians about a coming attack. In this case, I believe, according to the IDF spokesman, this is exactly what happened. We did it, Israel did it, and after we evacuated the area, the Syrians launched the air missiles, which shut down the airplane. So there is a mechanism which works. What will be the implications after this incident, I have no idea.
I want to ask about this area, sir, of Syria. It's very narrow. I mean, it's 100 kilometers wide, 60 miles wide. You have in this area Russian planes, IDF planes that go on attack sometime. You have Syrian anti-aircraft missiles, Iranian equipment. You have a lot of nations involved in a very complex and small area. How complicated of a war zone is this now?
As you said, it's more than being complicated. It's complex. If you zoom out and you look at it, you'll say that it's an impossible system. But it is possible because it's happening. 4 air forces are operating in a very limited, small airspace. As you said, the Russians, the Syrians, the Israeli Air Force and the Americans also are active. And now we have to coordinate, obviously, with the Americans and with the Russians, especially if we attack in areas which are very close to the Russian main deployments. For example, the last incident which took place in Latakia. The Russians' main deployment is in that area. So it is very complex, and there's a wide field for arrows, like it happened 2 days ago.
Very complex indeed. I want to go back to Moscow now. Jessica King standing by for us. Jessica, you mentioned before a lot of outrage from some halls in Parliament, in the Kremlin, outrage from military commanders. Perhaps what could change now that this happened, even if it was perhaps a tragic mistake? What new things could be put in place to stop it from happening again?
Well, as your guest said there, I mean, the Israeli defense say that they did follow well-established protocols in communicating with Moscow, but Moscow seemed to dispute that, saying, you know, they only had a minute's notice before these strikes happened, and that was not enough time for them to get their people out of the way. So I think clearly something went wrong there. So I'm sure that they will be discussing those protocols and how they can be tightened up and how they can be made more secure. I think, you know, the Russian defense will probably be looking at its own systems, and they said that the main sort of retaliation for this is actually going to be aimed at reinforcing security for Russian military in Syria. And there's already been talks about efforts to do that, about how to bolster their own security. So I'm sure that will be coming up today, and perhaps the Russians will be looking at, you know, Israel's role in Syria and what information they do share with them. At the moment, it's unclear, but I think there will be more statements coming out in the coming days.